All right, so we are here to talk about, people going out from their home country, going into new markets. Southeast Asia is our key focus here. And we're going to talk about 4 specific points. We're going to look at what it's like from an operational perspective. We are going to look about what's this trend look like in Southeast Asia. And we're going to look at how to approach the fragmentation, because Southeast Asia is not one market. Obviously, it's many, many markets, very unique in each market. And last but not least, how do we make choices as investors, right? So we're going to start by briefly introducing the panel on behalf of myself. So I'm a global multilingual entrepreneur, originally from Silicon Valley, was in China from mid-2004 until 2016 when I exited and started getting involved in angel investments. More recently, I'm now the co-program director at Mox. Mox is a mobile-only accelerator, helping mobile companies that are globally located tap into the emerging markets of Southeast Asia.
Hey, everybody. I'm Johnny Lee. There is one company I'm sure a lot of people maybe know. It is Cheetah Mobile. Actually, I come from Cheetah Mobile. And the one company named named SuperAtom. It is a fintech company incubated by Cheetah Mobile. And also in Indonesia, we have a local entity named One.me Fintech. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Devin from Grandview Capital. So Grandview Capital is a venture capital based in China. And we invested in early stage of the startups and who's doing business overseas, meaning Chuhai. So in the past 3 years, we already invested over 30 portfolios that was doing business or service Chuhai companies.
Sorry, my name is Andy, the founder of Silot. So we based in Singapore, a fintech company help the banks to building the decision engines. And in Indonesia, we also become a facilitator for SME to digitalize their credibility and also help SME and merchants in their business. So I in Southeast Asia already almost 18 years. So I speak Bahasa, I speak Thai, I stay here. So it's actually not really Chuhai going overseas. I stay here.
Very good to hear. My name is Dimitra. I'm Indonesian. I work for GGV Capital and look after investments in Southeast Asia and India. GGV is a global multi-stage venture capital fund. We're 6.5 billion. Have invested in more than 200 companies historically, 60 unicorns, 40 IPOs across 7 different exchanges around the world. And looking to do more investments in India and Southeast Asia.
Okay, well, let's kick it off. It's kind of funny for me I was originally a Laowai, looking into China, so I guess I was a Chuhai, right? But now that this trend is starting to emerge in Southeast Asia, what do you guys see in terms of how this is folding out? Who wants to start?
Lady first?
Somebody.
Oh, I can start. If you go to North Jakarta these days, right, you see so many Chinese entrepreneurs that are just behind all the ruko and all the shops. I think we've seen this trend happening probably actually 10 years ago. I think the managing partners of GGV Capital started noticing this trend. I've only been in the venture business for about 5 years, so I've only noticed this in the past 5 years. But I think as China is getting more competitive, and I think Southeast Asia brings a lot of allure for Chinese founders, less competition, a crystal ball in China that they've seen that they can selectively apply the lessons learned to a new part of the world where mobile and digital penetration and internet growth is so quick. So I think that's driven a lot of the trends of Chuhai from China coming to Southeast Asia, is the level of competition in China and the wide open market, I think, in this part of the world.
Yeah, so obviously I've seen some of that crazy competition. What does the rest of the panel think about this? What were some of the reasons that you decided to move out?
For me?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, firstly, I think Chuhai such words is not really happens for recent 10 years. It happens more than 100 years. There are a lot of
the sailors and Zhenghai.
Yeah, there are a lot of entrepreneurs come from Hokkien or Cantonese. They are moving to Indonesia, building the empire. So there are a lot of very big groups building by the Chinese by the original from China. So I think this phenomenon already lasts very long. And for Chuhai, these keywords actually only happen for the Chinese company. They are expanding in overseas. But if we are doing a startup, so we are actually building a local company. So for me, I have this my career in 15 years time to help the Chinese company growing in overseas. So when I build my own company, I don't feel this is like a Chinese startup or Chinese company. So we are doing some business in local. So I have to wear batik. I speak Bahasa. So I meet local banks and also even local merchant. I visit like village leaders in the very small town. So I think to be localized is much more important to expand overseas. This is my opinion.
Right. And from the standpoint of Devin, maybe like thinking about this from a venture perspective and investing, like if you look at, say, a local entrepreneur in each of these markets, or potentially, one of these Chinese entrepreneurs who are coming into the market, how do you compare them and how do you decide, maybe who is the right person to invest in?
Actually, for our fund, for now, we only invested in Chinese entrepreneurs that they're doing business, targeting overseas markets, either.
You got one right next to you. He's pointing.
Yeah. Either emerging markets or developed markets. And I think in China, we see the start point of Chuhai is in 2008. A Chinese company named iHandy, I don't know whether you guys heard of it. So it's a company, so they developed an application called Super Bright Flashlight to compensate the imperfection of the first iPhone, because they don't have such function or tools on this. So you can see for at the phase one of Chuhai companies, there are a lot of companies, they rely on developed utility applications to acquire large amount of users in a short time. And when the time goes by, we can see that Chinese companies have more ability to provide online entertainment and online services like gaming, finance services, e-commerce, recently in the recent years. So for now, we actually see Chuhai is more like a symbol of Chinese company doing globalization, either for the entrepreneurs or the big company.
Okay, so that raises another topic of interest. So as we think about globalization, right, and moving into these very, very unique markets, right, coming from an operational perspective, what do you think are the key things to consider, looking at entering these new markets from an operations perspective, particularly let's look at it from the Chinese perspective, Chinese moving into some of these markets?
Yeah, I think there one keyword I want to share, it is globalization. A lot of people saying that the globalization, but they do not understand too much about localization. What it means that, because actually in the past 10 or 15 years of rapid growth of Chinese economy and Chinese entrepreneurs, they have a lot of successful business models. They also find a big opportunity in Southeast Asia. They go abroad, but actually, go abroad does not mean just to set up an office and register a company and find one or two local sales or BD. That's it. Actually, much more to help build up the local long-term business. It much more rely on localization. I mean, for example, respect the local customs, local culture, local religion, and also local government regulation in compliance with all of the rules, and moreover also set up local teams. Actually, that's really a big challenge for us. Actually, we also try to learn, try to adopt the way. But I think that's a really big challenge. But also that's really something that we must conquer with. If I think plus with the the successful business models from China, and also capital and also technology, together with the local techniques or local culture, that will equals to success. I think that's the way. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And how do we think that as things are starting to play out? Like, all right, I could say as an American, like I watched American companies come into China and they did it all wrong, right? There's a lot of graveyard of American internet companies coming into China. What can we learn from the failure of some of these companies who tried to came into China, all right, and for the Chinese now moving into Southeast Asia, particularly as they go into these markets that are so unique and so special? What lessons can we apply from that learning to, say, improve the outcomes, as Chinese companies start to move out?
Yeah, I think the lessons are twofold. One is from a product level and one is operational level. So I'll start with the operational first. I'm Chinese Indonesian, so I'll be the first to tell you that the relationship between people who are ethnically Chinese and the local Indonesians is a very complex one. And it's one that traces all the way to Dutch colonial history. And so it's too long to cover in the next 6 minutes. But it is a complex one, and I think for any Chinese entrepreneurs who are looking to come into Indonesia and different parts of Southeast Asia, understanding that complexity, that cultural and historical complexity is exceptionally important. And so localization, anybody can say it, right? But I want to see that your top level managers are Indonesian, you learn to speak Bahasa, you go down to the factories and speak to the Indonesian workers. 80-90% of your workers are Indonesian. That's what I want to see. You can talk about it all day long, but the proof is in the pudding. So I think learning about the context and the history of the country's relationship with ethnically Chinese merchants, I think is very, very important. And there are many lessons to be had there. And on the product level as well, I want to move on to Vietnam, right? You look at something like Vietnam that is very Chinaphobic. And if you look at the product level, it's very interesting, right? We are investors in TikTok and ByteDance. If you look at entertainment, which is like TikTok, and the adoption is incredible in a place like Vietnam, right? Because you see that's all this entertainment is for fun. But if you look at WeChat doesn't have a shot in Vietnam. People use Zalo Pay and WhatsApp because to them, now chat is serious because you can get structured data from this. And I don't want you to have my structured data because I think you're somewhat linked to the Chinese government. So I think on the product level, understanding which kind of product works is very important. And then on the operational level, proving that you generally care about local people is also very important. And so I think it's both on a product level and an operational level.
Okay. I think also one of the important things to consider on top of the points that are already added here is where do you go first? Like how do you decide if you're going to go out, which market in Southeast Asia is it? Should they be going to Indonesia first, or Vietnam, or Thailand, or the Philippines? How should these companies choose their first international footprint in Southeast Asia? Or how would you recommend that they choose?
Me?
Sure.
Okay. We choose Thailand as the first market.
Why?
Okay, later I tell you. But I would like to explain for two angles. I was working in Baidu, so my ex-boss is the Baidu president, Zhang Yaqin. So he explained how can we going overseas and what kind of product we going overseas. So firstly, there's a opinion saying that we have to export those business model we already successful in China. So that's the first type of product, for example, like the Baidu map. And the second one is the product we missed the opportunity, but technically and in the business logic, we still can have some advance in the emerging market, for example, like financial services. So this is how the Chinese giant looking for step into the new market. And as a startup, so when I select the market, I will see firstly in our strengths what type of the market fit for us, and also based on the local government initiative and the needs of the ecosystem, which market we should step. The reason why we're entering in Thailand market is because about 2 or 3 years ago, Thailand launched the national QR PromptPay first. So that's the initiative for fintechs have a better chance because QR is a typically new thing for the payment, for whatever, everything. So the bank's infrastructure, the business model actually have a new chance to restructure. And the QRIS in Indonesia just recently launched. I heard the bank will be implement in commercial by 1st of January next year. So that's why we came here like a few months ago. And also in the market, we found more and more needs, real needs. For example, the market lack of facilitators in the credit services. And also the market need more and more technology providers in financial services. And then we come into the market. But there are a lot of markets. We are also exploring on, let's say, Middle East. We have some Middle East clients, and India, even Japan, we have some investors from Japan. So in Japan, we do the market, but we are not deep dive into the market. For me, nowadays I'm spending 80% of my time in Indonesia because I see the opportunity. The government forcing all the, let's say, lenders to have a productivity loan. Or this is the government initiative. So I believe a lot of, like I visit Warung every day. So I believe that the digitalization of the small business will be the new trend. So that's why if we fit into this initiative, then we come here.
Okay, well, we are rapidly running out of time. We are counting down 5, 4, 3. If anybody has a last sentence, each panelist has a last sentence about the trend that they see for this Chuhai phenomenon. What do you see, say, for the years coming forward in one sentence each? Anybody can start.
Next 10 or 20 years belongs to Southeast Asia. Let's do it together.
Great. Does anybody else want to follow that?
Indonesia is the most promising market in Southeast Asia, not only for economy, but also for in technology, in the traditional business to be digitalization. So there are huge opportunities here. So I believe if we are doing the right things in the market, then we get the right feedback.
Great.
I would say the Chinese have competition because Chuhai also applies to Indian entrepreneurs and the first generation of Flipkart, et cetera, Indian unicorn executives are looking for new markets, so they're going to come to Southeast Asia too.
Interesting.
So I think the digital economy is definitely going to boom in Southeast Asian market. So just one suggestion for entrepreneurs. I think the first thing you will think about is how to serve your customers more efficiently. Then you can think about making profits. Yeah.
Okay, great. So there's a lot of promise based on this panel in terms of where we're heading with Southeast Asia and Indonesia in particular. I want to thank Wild Digital for curating this great event today, and also to TechNode for their support on this panel. And I know we are the only thing between you and the happy hour, so enjoy yourselves.